Hey everybody, welcome to LiveCast Conversation With. As always, I'm the host, Gene, the Enjoyment Coach, and this is episode 42. Today, we have Martin Little joining us. Martin is the owner and lead carpenter at Okanagan ValleyView Homes, where he handles every aspect of home building, right from the planning stages through to the completion. Right from laying the foundation to applying the final coat of paint, Martin has been trained by and worked with many of the finest home builders in Canada. He helps owners bring their dream homes to life through his quality building, attention to detail, and the support of an amazing team. Martin is proud of his reputation of completing his projects on time, on budget, and with raving compliments and referrals from those clients. When Martin's not wearing his tool belt, he can be found playing with his adorable golden-doodle, Molly, hanging with his wife and 3 teenage kids, or following his passion skiing fast down the race hills at Big White. Martin, thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, I appreciate it, Gene. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome, sir. So, racing down the hills. I kind of want to just jump into the thing, that little passion part first. That's are you used to be a racer, or like is this a amateur thing, or just that you have the speed?
No, I grew up on the ski hills, but that was when I was in Ontario, and the hills are a little shorter there, but the snow is firm, and there's once you sort of get to a little bit, once you start getting a little bit more skill set, there's not much to do other than race. So
yeah,
I got into the racing pretty heavily. I went through some of the ranks up to the Ontario provincial team, and kind of hung the race gear up myself around 1920, and then kind of moved into coaching.
Oh, right on. So so you're still in active coaching?
Still active in the coaching. The last couple of years the last 8 years I've been coaching with Big White Racers.
Oh, wow.
This last past season, I was working with the U16 group, probably with U16 again this coming season. And one of my daughters is just transitioning from that U16 age up to the fist level. So it'll be a little bit of a transition for all of us this year, and a few changes as far as that's concerned.
Well, that's very cool. So what, aside from you have kids and you have a passion into racing, are those the two main things that keep you coming back?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the passion is the first and foremost, for sure.
Yeah.
And then the involvement in the racing and the involvement with the coaching is kind of that's definitely a drive to keep me coming back. And it's fun to sort of see the kids progress through the season, and have that ability to kind of play with them a little bit, and keeps me going. Oh,
I can only imagine. In that role, do you get to do you work with them as younger skiers, or do they kind of graduate into your program? Do you have set skiers you've been following this entire time, aside from your own kids?
I fortunately for me, I've actually had that ability to start from with some of the younger kids and work with a group coming up. Partially because one of my daughter was involved, so I kind of followed her a little bit and followed some of the kids that she was in the program with a little bit.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to work with higher age groups as well when I was that was 4 or 5 years ago. And then I kind of went back and then came back, and now back up to the U16 group. So it's so
you've been kind of all over, and I can only imagine doing that coaching must have some sort of tie over to being an owner, which means you run a team of people. So you're a coach on the hill, and probably out on the work site as well.
Definitely. Definitely. It's a little bit of correlation there. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you see? How do you see those two things overlapping?
I think primarily the ownership for me, it was a means to an end. I wanted to be on the ski hill more in the winter, so tough to do if you're working for somebody. So I kind of moved into the ownership role in a sense pretty young.
Yeah.
Took control of my own hours, took control of my own ability to kind of schedule myself as much as I could, and now trying to grow the company and trying to have a team underneath me is got its own challenges to keep everybody going in the right direction, and making sure that the items are there that need to be so that they can keep going. And
right.
Yeah.
So obviously, you at a very young age, you had a passion for going fast and skiing. Then now you're the owner of Okanagan ValleyView Homes. What sparked your interest into construction and carpentry, right?
Probably one of my mentors earlier on. He was a ski coach and he was a carpenter. And I sort of kind of saw that, oh, wow. If I do that, I can have a little bit more free time in the winter. And it hasn't fully worked out that way, but...
Well, being an entrepreneur is, the running joke is like, it's a great way to quit a 40-hour, 60-hour week job just to turn it into an 80-hour week job, right? Like,
yeah.
I think that's something that probably resonates with a lot of people. So you got interested in it from a mentor. Did you start like working with him, or like what was your first like foray into this industry?
I did. Yeah. I started working for him. He had a full-on construction company at the time. And he ran, I really enjoyed the way that he ran his company, and I can't say that I'm doing it exactly the way he did. But he had the ability to kind of pair me up with people that were well-trained in various aspects of the industry. And really kind of gave me the opportunity to learn a lot about drywall specifically, and then framing from other guys, and tile setting from other guys. And so just being able to work alongside guys who were very proficient in their trades really kind of, oops, sorry.
It's all good.
Really kind of gave me that ability to learn hands-on, multiple aspects of the trades and of the industry.
Right. And that was from a young age. You were able to get a bit of a sampling of what it is that you liked. Obviously, there was something about building that spoke to you. And so then you were able to find that and take that, hone that into your own craft. Yeah.
Yeah. I think realistically it was because I had the ability to kind of really learn a lot through the entire progress of building a house. What I really enjoyed was not just specifying in one trade or one aspect of it, but I enjoyed the change and the diversity of being able to kind of do some of the foundation work or do some of the framework, and then finish it up and get the finishing work involved. So it sort of, there wasn't, I grew tired, I think, of just one aspect too quickly. Yeah. So if I was just a framer or just a drywaller, I kind of tire of it quickly and get bored and stale.
Yeah.
So it was having the ability to kind of really see everything through from start to finish is kind of a neat aspect of the building.
Right.
And really kind of keeps me in the loop, and sometimes in one place for a long time, which is okay as well.
Well, but getting to see that from start to finish and knowing that you've got all these little pieces that you can take into it, and you are able to then leverage those to help keep your interest flowing, because there's nothing more, I think, devastating personally, like looking at somebody who's like bored out of their mind, just doing the same thing day in and day out. If we were to do that, we'd be robots. We're not robots. So like our superpower as a race or as a species is being creative and being able to, do multiple things, and we get to use our hands and that creative side. So I imagine being in the the home building world, you have to be utilizing all that to pull it together to really bring some of these dream homes together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So at what point were you like, so obviously you wanted to be able to control your time a little bit. So like what drew you, like what was those first steps that you took? Like, can you take us a little bit back to like the first couple of years of like going out and running your own show from working on somebody else's crew?
Sure. I guess part of my upbringing back in Ontario was the guy that I worked primarily for. I mean, I think I had about 3 different companies that I kind of worked for, and the one that I had the longest relationship with, he didn't really have a crew per se, but he treated everybody as their own independent contractor, and basically said, okay, submit your invoices, and here's how much you get paid, and so I kind of learned a little bit about what I needed to do as far as running the books. Very little. A little bit about scheduling myself. One of his things was that he really wanted us to be able to have some other small jobs on our own as well, just for tax reasons.
I understand.
So yeah, it gave me a taste of kind of looking at trying to find my own clients and trying to do small jobs here and there on my own, and really gave me that ability to kind of manage my own schedule, manage my own hours. Didn't really have a team at that point in time, so the majority of my career I've kind of been, a lot of the time just me, or working with, or occasionally getting paired up with other people on larger projects. So it's only been in the last 4 or 5 years that I've started to try and started to bring people on underneath me, and work with them and teach them a little bit where they needed to be taught, and rely on people who had skill sets already involved, to be able to kind of grow the project and help the team move along and help projects move along fairly quickly.
How have you found your role has evolved as you started to bring those people on?
Spend a lot more time in my truck, and putting miles on the truck. Well, for some reason, I still seem to be I become the one running out to get the materials and running out to get this, and so I've become a little bit more of a gopher for a sense. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not sure whether that's the role that I wanted to get into. And I had somebody once tell me, okay, well, you should be hiring somebody at minimum wage to run around and do all that. And I'm like, maybe. I can't imagine they would. I think I would still need to be putting together a pretty proficient list in order to be able to have somebody doing it that way. But
so that's maybe a new area of discomfort to be like stepping into, is pulling back out of the gopher stage and getting back into. So if running around if right now what that sounds like is, as the leader, your job is to go take the roadblocks out of your crew's way. If that means going off and getting a load of lumber or what materials that they need, that's what you're doing. You're dropping the other stuff, because the most important thing is, as leaders, to remove those roadblocks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that terminology a little better.
Way better than calling yourself a gopher.
Way better. A roadblock remover. You're a
roadblock remover, right? And that's the core of leadership. Is you're no longer, it's that dance between, 4 or 5 years ago, you were still probably very much in the trenches doing all the work, and then slowly, you got your first crew member, then other ones started to come along. Your role starts to morph into this area that you're no longer doing the work, but you're coaching and you're instructing and you're getting alignment, so that when the people come to the site, they know what they're supposed to be doing. There isn't, there's not a bunch of question marks that they have to raise, right? I imagine, in your write-up, we talked about you doing a lot of the planning. So it sounds like part of that is you taking that and working with the clients, coming up with the dream. This is their dream. Then you have to take all that and go, okay, guys, crew, here's what we have to do, and here's how we start this. How do you lead? What's that process like, from working with a client, going, what's your dream, and pulling that out of them? And then we'll talk about taking that to being able to deploy it to your team.
Some people, it's actually very easy. They've got a very clear picture of what it is that they want, and those ones I think make my job very easy. The ones that aren't as clear, it it does create a lot more challenge, because then we're not able to really plan as far ahead as we'd like to be able to keep things moving along very well.
Right.
Drawing some of those ideas out it's a challenge. I've got a client that we're working with right now where the decision-making process is happening a little slower than I'd like it to be.
Right.
So trying to lean on them, and I think part of that is because they've got multiple layers in the ownership structure. So it's it can create challenges in the project. So it's a lot of the times I think it's better to be able to communicate with the client and sort of say, okay, if we're not 100% clear, let's make sure that we are. Let's spend a little more time in that planning phase. Get all the details sorted out so that when we do hit the ground, we can hit the ground running quickly.
Right. Do you find then, is it always coming down to making the decision? Like, is that the difference between like what's the good clients going, hey, here's my dream and I've already made this decision, versus the clients that are like, I kind of don't know, or are they a little bit afraid because like it's not a cheap investment to be making either, right? And is there the sense of like, oh, I don't want to make the wrong choice? Is that kind of what shows up with between those two?
Maybe a little bit. Cat's got my tongue there a little. Yeah, maybe a little bit in some respect. Hard to say really what drives the ones that are stuck on their decision making, whether it's cost issues, whether it's just ambivalence about the full project or where they're at, where their mindset's at.
Right. So it could be a little bit of like there's some fear around money. There's maybe a big question mark around what is it that they actually want. Mm-hmm. They're having that difficulty even seeing it in their own mind, which means it's difficult for them to walk you through that dream. Yeah. Do you find that you have to, in those cases, how do you help? Because I'd imagine that part of that is then you have to kind of like seed it to be like, hey, does this kind of feel and look like your dream? Like what does that look like when you're taking somebody through that?
Some back and forth discussions, obviously. It's fortunately it's not something that happens regularly, but it's the 6 o'clock discussions in the afternoon, and then the follow-up conversations, and then sometimes another conversation on the weekend, just to kind of make sure that the clarity is there, make sure that we can kind of fit the timing together properly.
But at the end of the day, you obviously find a way to make these people into raving fans, which is like again, huge investment, lots of time being put in by you and your crew. And at the end of it, more often than not, you've shared that you've got clients that are super happy. They're happy to the point that they're referring you to others.
Yeah.
So like that takes an art in itself around just the customer of managing that whole experience from them, right? Because they're kind of doing that work for people that aren't in that industry. Could be like a bit of a black box going, I don't know, are they doing a good job? Are they on time? Are they on budget? Like what ways do you help manage and keep on top of that?
Some of the software that I've started to use to put into place, that helps me to kind of communicate with a little bit more with the client and show them pictures of what's happening, especially if they're not able to be on site regularly. Then we've got that ability to kind of photograph and upload documentation of here's where the progress has gone today. Here's our projected timelines, and here's some of the decisions that we need you to make in order to keep this on track.
That's I would imagine, like from my IT world, being able to show my clients their roadmap and the projects and where they're at, what decisions hold up, what things. It's always been important. But it sounds like in the construction world, you've got a piece of software that allows you to have that type of transparency at literally their thumb, right? They pull it up on their phone and at any time know where you're at instead of like having that worry and that panic. So what you've done, what I'm hearing is what you've done is you've provided a large amount of transparency in an industry that is like kind of like from a customer's experience has not been known for its transparency. And so they're able to actually rest easy going, oh, Martin's on top of it. I can already see what's going on. He's given me my weekly update or daily update, depending on how quickly things are going. There are, the gap between, where are we at and getting that information seems to be incredibly small, which allows you to have some really big wins on a client side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely been a little bit of a game changer. The software, the only thing that I can say is that with software, I'm not a tech genius by any stretch of the imagination. I haven't found a piece of software yet that can drive a nail. So once I get that, then I'll be all over it. But, it definitely helps as far as the organization of a project and the communication aspect and in that regard. So.
Right. And that's honestly from the client side, that's always the most critical component is to know where they're at so they don't have to have that worry. It comes down to a fear again. Yeah.
And we also we can also kind of modify the schedule as required and as needed through there too. So and anytime there's a change, then they will get notified. There's a little bit of a change that's happened, and here's how it's affected the schedule. So
yeah, and you've said you've already noticed since you've deployed this, it's been a game changer. Mm-hmm. What is that? How's that showed up as a game changer with your clients? Like I can make some assumptions based on what we talked about, but like contrast that from a client you had right before you did it to the ones that you have now.
I would say sometimes the phone calls are a little less, because the communication is already coming out to virtually in a sense.
Yeah.
As soon as I do a daily log, then I can click a button and I get notified, and they can read what the log report was with some photographs or. So there's not so much, what's going to be happening what's going to be happening then, and when are these windows coming in, or when is this framing going to happen, and it's all there.
Right.
So they're able to see it and at the click of a button easily.
And that's going to be starting to set a bar now. I don't know about the rest of the competition in the Valley and stuff. Is this something that a lot of other people are being so forward thinking on? Because I'm going to say that's forward thinking. You saw a situation with your customers, which are the people that keep the roof over your head and food on you and your crew's table. Like, wow, how can I make their life a little bit better going through this process? And you took a step into using software to do that, which a lot of people may have been afraid of to do.
I can't speak to the competition. I'm not sure what kind of programs they may or may not be running. I know some of the sub trades that I use have their own versions of software which helps them to communicate and do billing and that kind of thing. But honestly, I'm not sure what some of the other builders and some of the other renovators in town, what they've got in their toolbox as far as that kind of firepower.
Yeah. What drove you to making this choice, right? Like, was there at some point you're like, man, these calls are happening too often. How do I actually empower my people? Or like, was there something else that was going on where like, everyone needs this clarity?
I needed the clarity.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I needed the clarity, and there was some difficult discussions that I'd had at various points leading up to it, where I was kind of getting leaned on for scheduling and just I can only rely on Google Calendar for so much.
Yeah.
And then to try and be able to overlay that to sort of see where everything that I've got on the go, that everything that's on my plate, where everything fit in. I was having kind of it was a little muddled, a little murky,
right,
at times. So it's also helped me to see the forest through the trees, so to speak.
Right. Which, again, it brings that all the way back is like your job as the leader then becomes to set clarity. And if you don't have that clarity, well, then that can't roll out across to your clients and to your team.
Mm-hmm.
What was the process like to dive in to go find that tool that was going to help bring that for you, right? By the sounds of it, it sounds like as you've gotten bigger, the complexity comes with managing multiple projects, because then if you're keeping all that in your head, it's really easy for everything to get sideways really quick.
Yeah. It's sometimes easier when you're just on your own, but so when I've got multiple people, then it's definitely I need to be able to have the clarity myself as well, and there becomes a few more cogs in the wheel. So I obviously I spent a fair bit of time kind of taking a look at what was out there and what was available to me to kind of fill that void. Settled on the one program that I'm running now, and seems to be working fairly well so far.
That's awesome. What made it stand out? Like obviously there's for every problem there's a ton of software out there, a ton of different options. So like what about this stood out for you? We're like, the clarity. This is exactly what I need.
Mostly the job scheduling capabilities and how mobile friendly it was, so that I could be on a job site. I could pull my phone out, take a picture, click a couple buttons, and it would upload right away.
Right.
I could modify some scheduling and notify some of my sub trades from a couple other clicks on my phone, and there's definitely a little bit more depth that I can do once I'm back in the office. But it was that mobile capability that really kind of made it a worthwhile choice. My crews can also log in, log out, and it becomes their time card in a sense as well.
Right. So that kind of that helps. And from that, what I'm hearing is like it provides when you're on the job, no matter what plan it is, nothing ever goes according to plan. But if you don't have the ability to be flexible and change it on the fly when you're presented with a challenge, that just makes that plan even get worse, right? Because then, as you say, there's sub trades and other people that are going to rely on that next step, and you can then at a push of a button go, hey, we have an issue, here's the issue, and this is what here where we're going to be the next start time. Everybody gets notified right away without having to pick up the phone, talk to everybody individually. Everyone can be on the same page like that.
It's that was really part of what kind of drove me to kind of bring this stuff on board. I haven't been using it long enough to really sort of say that I'm an expert with it, but it's growing on me.
Well, are you finding now that you've had it and contrasting it to where you were before, are you finding that the stress levels are dropping a little bit?
Sometimes, but I mean, I think where the biggest stress level is right now is the volume of work and the time frames that some people are really wanting to try and get things done at, and being able to kind of coordinate all the bodies and put people in fill those voids so that I can make sure that all my time frames are met.
Right. So now you're different stresses. You don't have to worry about where all the calendars are or what are the commitments. Now you got to worry about like putting asses in those seats to be able to get the jobs actually done.
Yes.
And in a market like this, I imagine it is very competitive to find those people to get in there.
Very competitive, yeah. So it's big challenge there.
But one that you're up to, and one that with the tools that you've got and the experience, it's going to allow those people to kind of hit the ground running. I imagine a little bit quicker and better.
Yeah. The bodies that I've been able to kind of bring in, we've been able to kind of hit the ground running regardless of this kind of the skill level. It's been pretty easy to sort of get them going and give them direction so that it's like, okay, we're filling the hours in the day.
Nice.
Sometimes wishing there was more hours in the day because we'd still be able to fill those too.
Well, there's never any end of work if you've got a good system and a good reputation. Martin, it's already 30 minutes in. I told you that at the start of this was going to fly by, and this has been great. So why don't you give a quick little plug to Okanagan Valley Homes, and like share about, what's your ideal project?
Right now, we're in the middle of quite a large renovation project, which has presented quite a few challenges and surprises. Renovations for me can sometimes be quite a bit of fun. The reason being is as you kind of open things up, you don't always know what you're going to find. So there's always some surprises. There's challenges and problems that need to be resolved along the way. Yeah. And doing that problem solving is kind of I've been fairly successful in being able to resolve problems and that kind of stuff. The brand new ground ups, they're usually a little easier to manage. So because you're starting fresh. So as soon as the foundation is set, the footings are in the ground, you're away and running. It's pretty simple process. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the next kind of very large scale renovation where we can kind of get into it and disassemble a little bit and really take the space that's already there and create something fantastic inside of it. Nice.
So it sounds like the preference is bringing new life to something that's been there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. One of the areas that I really do want to get into is a little bit more ground up, so that we can have a ground up going, and then still have that renovation projects going at various places. Right. Just to be able to keep all the crews kind of happy and kind of moving forward through their days.
So it comes full circle back to having enough variety and things to do that everybody's not bored.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the key, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of jokingly tell myself that I'm pretty ADD and I have my squirrel moments. So if we've got the variety, then I find the squirrel moments are a little further and fewer between.
I think that's like a very common trait among like people that start businesses, right? Like you need to pull in that horsepower a little bit. Like the squirrel brain has its definitely detractors, but it also has some really great benefits as well. Being able to wear multiple hats and keeping around and not, if you structure your things right, you're not getting bored, or you're getting bored right at the right time that you're hopping into the next thing and not being pulled off. You kind of need that as the boss, because you never know what is going to happen. So you got to be able to kind of like flow around and do it. So, but
for sure,
that's definitely something that a lot of us have that are in that role. Well, I've got the one last question is we're going to hop into my time machine. We're going to go back 10 years. When we get there, we're going to open up the door and you get the chance to give the younger you one piece of advice. What would that be?
Buy Tesla.
Buy Tesla. Now, the stock or the car?
The stock. I think if I went back far enough, just depending on how far back, I think I would sort of try and tell myself to stay in school. I mean, I think I'm still learning right now, and for sure I am still learning. But I think there would have been a few opportunities had I kind of had a little bit more of a formal education younger on, that may have really kind of molded me and been able to kind of get me to where I am now sooner, so to speak. So I think I enjoyed what I was doing coming up, but just not being afraid of the educational process, and there's particularly kind of some more formality in the education to whether I actually would need the letters at the end of my name and the initials. Not really, but it would be nice to kind of have some paper backing up some of the things that I've learned along the way.
Right. So I hear being super open to the education and realizing as well, like you are becoming a lifelong learner.
Absolutely, yeah. It was. It's probably in the last 3 years that I invested quite a bit of time into more of an education. It's particularly around building and building sciences and stuff like that. And part of that was just to be able to obtain the home builder's licensing here in BC.
Right.
It was quite an educational process with that, and after going through it, I was like, well, you know what? There's still a hell of a lot that I can learn. And not just from experience. Experience is a great teacher, but also being able to learn from some of those who have already been down the pathway in a more formal setting, and having that openness to have those discussions and sit down and not just, here you go, try this, and well, that doesn't work. Let's go back to ground zero and try it again. So
it really is. So when I hear from that, it's about taking that formal education and mixing it in to being able to apply it, and using what you've learned through the world of experiences. Like, try it. Did it work? Yes, no. Do it again, and can we do it better? And taking that other education, which now starts to give you other perspectives, kind of fuels it and allows that to grow even more.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great piece of advice. So I appreciate you sharing that, Martin.
Awesome. No, it's been a lot of fun. So,
well, and the journey is probably just really beginning too.
I think so. Yeah. So.
Perfect. All right. Well, Martin, thank you so much for being on episode 42. I've really appreciated the conversation. It has been great. And to everybody else, we will see you next week on episode 43. Talk to you then.
Thanks, Gene.
All right. Thanks, Martin.